Today on Oklahoma Gardening, we are planting up some fun container combinations. Then we head over to the OSU Student Farm to plant our basil crop. And Christi is in the kitchen serving up a shrimp tomato pasta. Underwriting assistance for our program is provided by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing. Oklahoma Gardening is also a proud partner with Shape Your Future, a program of the Tobacco Settlement Endowment Trust. Shape Your Future provides resources for Oklahomans to make the healthy choice the easy choice.
I love sharing with you guys the cool things that plants can do. We're back here at the student farm. I want to share with you a tropical plant that you might find in some Oklahoma landscapes. It's important to know which plants we are dealing with so that we can continue to maintain them successfully for years to come. I'm excited about the spring display that we are getting started here. You may recognize this area. We've replaced our keyhole garden and also our concrete bench that we had here and our pallet garden with a new display. And you can see behind me we've got some different baskets that we've created. So really our idea here was to create different color combinations and container recipes for you guys to get different ideas. So it's a very colorful display and I'm very excited. So I wanted to kind of go through how we've developed our container designs here and also how we went about building these. So you can see we've got ours on just kind of alternating heights anywhere from about 3 to 4.5 feet. And we wanted it something so that when you fill it up, usually the plant you put in here is going to be about 2 to 2.5 times the actual depth of your container. So we've got some different heights here. This is one of the shorter ones that we're doing. And so what we've done here is we've just put them on a 4x4 post. We've got them anchored on there. And then we actually drilled into a kind of a piece of wood here to give it more of a solid base. And then we've got our cocoa fiber baskets that we've put in here. Make sure that if you're hooking them up to irrigation, you've ran your irrigation cord up through that so that we're ready to go. And we're gonna eventually come back and staple these to the post so you don't see that either. We just want to make sure we left plenty of line in the meantime so that we can get our irrigation exactly set where we want to. So we have excess right now at this point. So the containers that we're using today have not only holes on the side, obviously you can see we can put a lot of different trailing plants here, but we're going to be able to put a lot inside here. These are about 16 inches in diameter, so we got a lot of plants to fill in here. Now you probably have heard with containers, you want to think about a thriller, a filler, and then a spiller. So what we're going to do next is go ahead and fill this with some good potting soil that we have here. Then we'll put some slow release fertilizer in here so that we've got plenty of nutrients to feed all of these plants because we are kind of packing a few in here, but it's going to really take off once they get settled in. So you'll notice that when I filled this with soil, I didn't fill it completely full, and that's because we've got to plant the sides before we actually go all in with all of our soil. And we're going to be packing a lot of root balls in here. So once we get all of our plants in here, then we'll go in and make sure that we've filled in the areas between the root balls with some additional soil. So of course I didn't want to fill it completely full, so we've got that. Now we can shift down here and take a look at the plants that we're going to fill this container with. So when we were looking at which plants, I really was just kind of, paying attention to some different colors that I personally liked. And I was really drawn to this petunia. that kind of has a sort of a lighter red, almost pink stripe to it, but then the throat of it has a real deep purple to it. And I was also drawn to this almost black looking petunia and putting those together. So that sort of brought me to looking at a kind of purple, deep black almost, and to kind of a burgundy color combination. So as we were going through the nursery, we started looking at some other plants to go with it, keeping in mind whether we were going to use, what we were going to use for a thriller, a spiller, and then also a filler. So we came across these real deep purple salvias, and then also this kind of dark red that's got the deep green veins to it. This is a polka dot plant. And then of course our purple fountain grass, which is a great thriller to put in any container. So we've got that here in the front, or right in the center of our container. And we were thinking about what we wanted to put as a spiller to kind of go along the edges. So we've got some of these petunias that we're going to put along the edges, but then we also want a little bit of green. And if you look at all of this green, it's really got a kind of a deeper color to it. And I thought this wire vine would be a nice combination with that. And if you look at the stems, it picks up on that dark purple on the stems as well. So I thought that would be a great combination to just add a little bit of greenery. So that's going to go along the edges here. So when we're planting a container like this, like I said, we don't want to put all of our potting soil in here so that we can make sure that we have space to get these in. And it's really best to go ahead and plant your sides first before you go in with the center stuff. So we're going to start by putting this wire vine in around the edges. So when you're planting the sides here, it's really a matter of just kind of pushing those through the hole. It's not too big of a deal there. It can be more tricky if you're using larger plants. But that cocoa fiber is really going to help hold that soil in there. And so you can see they're just going to rest in there. We've got 4 of these wire vines to plant around here, so we're going to just space them out so that we can have kind of that different color and texture as you go around the basket. And then we're also going to put the petunias around on the edges as well, hanging. So now you can see we have all of our plants planted on the side, so it's time to go ahead and fill the center up. And I think because we have some smaller plants to put in here, we're going to go ahead and put a little bit more soil in here. And that way we also have some covering the root balls of all of these on their sides too. Again, I say soil, but this is really potting soil. You want to make sure that you're not using topsoil in containers like this because it doesn't provide adequate drainage. So we're just going to put a little bit more in there on the sides and mound it up in the center for our container that we're putting here in the center. And at this point, I like to work from the center out. So we have this purple fountain grass. We only bought one because we only need one as the center focal point. It's a smaller container, which is nice to put in here, but it definitely will get larger and be that thriller aspect that we want in our container here. And that's something to keep in mind when you're out buying plants. Think about where it's going to go in your container so you can kind of know whether I need one of those or whether you need maybe 3. So we bought 3 of the others. So we've got our salvias here. So I'm just going to kind of show where those are going to be. And because they're dark purple, I'm going to try to space those so that they're over above the red color. And then I'm going to put that one up front because it's a little showier than this other one that's kind of past its bloom at the current time. And then we're going to fill in with our dark burgundy polka dot plant here in between those. So I'm kind of just placing them in here to check their height. And I think we're good with the amount of potting soil that we have in here. And so at this point we can start planting them. Again, if you had a larger 1 gallon or something like that, you might be limited on how many plants you could put in here. But I think this looks good. And of course they're gonna fill in and even just fill out even more. So I'm excited about how these are gonna look. Now, when we were doing this, while I'm talking right now a lot about the colors and the combinations that we're putting together, when you're putting a container together, probably the most important thing really to keep in mind when you're selecting plants is to make sure that those plants want the same environment, because you're planting them together. So of course here with all of our containers, we are in bright full sun, so we wanted to make sure we've got plants that can handle full sun, and also the same water regime as well. So while you could do a vegetable container, you could do a succulent container, keep in mind that you can't do succulents next to water-loving plants, because I always say one of those are likely going to do well and one is probably going to fail. So depending on how much water you actually provide it with. So all of these plants that we've selected for each of our containers do well together. And we were kind of limited because all of these containers are actually going to be on the same drip system. So we wanted to make sure that all 9 of our containers are going to enjoy the same amount of water that they're going to get throughout the season as well. So, and again, they're all in full sun here. So if you notice, when I'm taking these out of the containers, I'm sort of teasing those roots a little bit, but I'm not even really planting them because we're going to have to come back in and put more soil around these. So I've just got them placed on top of the soil here. And the other thing is, when we fill this back in, we want to make sure that we're putting the soil just slightly below our edge so that when we do water this, we don't have a whole bunch of potting soil that's going to run over the edge of this. So at this point, I think we can go ahead and add some more soil in and around each one of these. So once we have them all nice and tucked in with potting soil, again, make sure that there aren't any gaps, especially around those root balls, because that can really cause them to dry out quickly. Of course, we're going to water these in really well and be mindful, especially in these first few days as they're just getting established. But these are going to take off pretty quickly. We'll want to make sure that we're giving them some fertilizer. We did put a slow release in here, so there will constantly be a supply of it. But again, we've got a lot of plants packed in this small area, so they are going to need frequent irrigation as well as some nutrients. But I think you can see the color combinations are going to work really well together. And again, we picked plants that like the same environment, so that's always critical when you're making a container. And we'll see how the rest of them turned out. If you look at the whole scope of what we planted 9 containers here, and we've got some that are kind of the yellows, lemons, citrus colors, I call them. And then we've gone to like a peach color, and we also have some hot pinks. And one thing that we've tried to include also in all of these containers, if you look, is there's always some foliage that adds some color to it too. So that's kind of a critical component or a trick that I always feel like is important, because even when you don't have plants that might be blooming all season long, you're going to have that foliage that's going to give you that pop of color as you continue through the season. So this is just a fun display, and we'll check back in again with it later on as they fill out. Today we're out here at the OSU Student Farm to plant our basil transplants. You might remember that earlier we planted some basil seeds in the greenhouse, and we've taken them, we've hardened them off, and we have them ready to plant out here. You can see we've got nice transplants, a couple inches tall. We've got some true leaves coming on there. We've got a good root system as well. Now you'll see that as they were hardening off, they did get a little frost damage, but they're going to grow right out of that. Basil loves warm temperatures, so I know as soon as we get these in the ground, they're going to take off. Our bed behind us here is also prepped. We've got a nice raised bed that's covered with plasticulture, plastic mulch. Underneath there is a drip tape, and so the plastic is really nice to help with weed suppression. So that's a lot of times one of the biggest problems with field-grown crops is that weed competition. It robs a crop of its resources, its nutrients, its water, and so that'll help suppress some of those weeds. Now we're going to plant these on an 18-inch spacing, 2 rows down a single row, so it's going to alternate back and forth. And today I'm excited because we are out here with some of the student workers, Sam and Parker, who are going to be helping us. So Parker's our driver, right? I think we're ready to get started. And Sam, you're going to show me how we use this transplanter thing, right?
Yep.
So it's kind of an awkward seat a little bit.
Yes.
So we're gonna just be riding back here a little bit, right? And what's the first thing that we need to know about when we're on here?
So basically when Parker starts the tractor, we'll turn on the water and get a plant ready in our hand. And once he moves, when the hole is created, we'll just put the plant in there and cover it up.
Okay. So it just makes a nice hole for us so we don't have to do any digging.
Yes.
We got a nice ride here, air cushion ride. We got our gloves on.
Yeah, and then the water comes down so it reduces some of the shock for the plant.
So how do we give him the cue to get going?
Parker, you're good.
So how fast are we gonna be going? Like, do I need to really be ready, or is this?
So thanks to the hydrostat tractor that we have, it actually allows us to go in less than half a mile per hour. So we will be crawling pretty slow. Give us time to put the plants in.
So obviously we can turn the water down a little bit. I think we finally got that regulated, right?
Yes.
Can you also change the spacing on these things?
Yeah, so we have different spacing wheels depending on the type of plant. So for these, we're doing 18, like you said, for the aeration, and just to get a bigger, bushier plant.
So I feel like I might be missing a few with these, but I suspect it's a little bit easier to fix some mistakes rather than having to do all this by hand yourself.
Yeah, so even if you miss one or two, we have people in the back usually that are helping us.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah, so they can fill in those blanks for us. And then, yeah, it obviously is a big time saver, because if we were on our hands and knees right now doing all this work, it would take hours for sure.
So that's it, Sam.
Yep, doesn't take very long.
No, I think that was like 10 minutes?
10 to 15 minutes per row typically, yeah, it doesn't take very long.
Maybe me a little longer.
Yeah.
So we might go back and kind of check some of them at this point just by hand, but we
Yeah.
got our helpers back there.
That's typically why we have them, so they can just make sure that we have them all planted right and don't have to go back and do it again.
Okay. So I did notice there's a bit of a twist when you're doing this, right?
Yes.
So do you guys rotate seats so that you can twist the other direction?
You know, we have talked about doing that. We always joke about like, oh, we're gonna get abs on one side, so we always like joke about doing it. I typically don't switch sides, but you can if it does hurt your back.
All right. Well, definitely a time saver, and it's easier on your back all around rather than bending over doing all of
it. It
this.
is,
So
yeah.
thank you so much for having me out today to do this. And
yeah.
we look forward to seeing our basil grow.
Me too.
Are you looking for a healthy new dinner recipe that only uses a few simple ingredients but is packed with flavor? If so, you're going to want to try this basil, shrimp, and tomato pasta with feta. And for this recipe, we're going to start with pasta, and you can use any kind of pasta, whatever your favorite shape of pasta is. I think that we're going to use penne pasta, but really if you wanted to use a spaghetti pasta or bow tie pasta, I think that would work equally as well. But we are using a whole grain penne pasta, and I do recommend a whole grain pasta because that's going to provide some extra nutrients and a lot more fiber. And fiber is important for our blood sugar, our digestion, and also for a healthy cholesterol. So for our pasta, we'll just need to prepare this according to our package directions. Now our next ingredient is going to be our shrimp. If you didn't want to use shrimp for this recipe, you could substitute using chicken instead. Or if you wanted to make it vegetarian, you could just omit the shrimp and the chicken because you're still going to get protein from the whole grain pasta and the feta cheese. But this shrimp has it's already been peeled and deveined, and the tails have been removed. So the last thing with our shrimp is going to be to just cook it, and it'll cook really quickly. So we're going to set this aside for now and start on our tomatoes. So we're going to be using 2 pints of grape tomatoes. If you'll notice, we have a variety of some different colors and shapes of tomatoes, but we're going to want to cut all of these in half. And you could really use whatever tomatoes that you have. If you wanted to even use Roma tomatoes, those would work. You would just need to cut those up. But That's a lot of tomatoes. So I want to show you all a little hack that I recently learned, where you can cut a large amount of the tomatoes at a time, so that it'll take a lot quicker to prepare the recipe. So for this, you're going to need 2 lids. They just need to be either the same identical lids or at least similar in size. And you'll put one lid down on the cutting board, and you'll want the lip of the lid up, and that's what's going to actually hold your tomatoes in place. So we'll just go ahead and put the tomatoes on top of the lid, and then with the other lid, you'll place it the same. You'll put the flat side down on top of the tomatoes, and so you're not going to want to press down, but just kind of put enough pressure to hold the tomatoes still, but not to smash them. That's not what we're going for here. But then with your knife hand, you will just take the knife and slice it through all the way across until you have all of the tomatoes cut in half. Okay, and now that we have all of our tomatoes cut in half, we're going to move on to our basil. And basil is something that you don't want to leave out of this recipe. It's really important for the flavor that it will give this dish. And we're just going to take some of the leaves off of the stem. We're going to need a total of about 3 tablespoons of basil. And we are going to maybe take some of the smaller leaves and we'll pack those under inside of the larger leaves, but we're not going to do anything too fancy. We're just going to kind of roughly chop the basil. Okay, and now our vegetables are all prepared and we can move on to the shrimp. Now we're going to want to cook the shrimp on a medium to high heat. Again, the shrimp is going to cook really quickly, so we don't want to have it too high. So once our pan gets a little bit warm, we're going to add about 2 tablespoons of oil to the pan. And now I'm using olive oil. Olive oil is a really healthy, heart-healthy oil. It's a good unsaturated fat. But if you didn't have olive oil, a good substitution for that would be canola oil. That would work just as well as the olive oil. And you're going to want to make sure that with your pan, that you're using a large enough pan that the shrimp is going to have plenty of room to cook. Now, you don't want the shrimp to overlap any. You're going to want to make sure that each of the shrimp pieces have plenty of room. And you'll notice when shrimp is raw, that it really is translucent in color. And so that's one of the ways that we can watch it when it's cooking, to make sure that it changes from this translucent to a more opaque color, opaque appearance and a pink color. But again, I'm just going to make sure that all of the shrimp is in one single layer so that none of it's overlapping, because we want it to cook evenly. And now that all of our shrimp has turned pink, now we're going to go ahead and add our tomatoes and basil to the shrimp. And we're going to want to cook the tomatoes. We don't want to cook them all the way down. We just want to cook them until they're somewhat wilted. And we'll add our basil. Okay, so we want these tomatoes to keep cooking until you can start noticing them wilting a little bit. If you'll notice, we're using a combination of some different colors tomatoes, which really give it that bright color. Now, you don't have to use all of these different colors of tomatoes. You could just use red tomatoes. They're all going to give us a good amount of vitamin A, vitamin C, and antioxidants. So regardless, it's still going to be a healthy dish. I'm just going to let this cook for about 2 more minutes. And in the meantime, I'm going to go drain our pasta. Now that our shrimp is fully cooked and our tomatoes are wilted, we're going to go ahead and add our very last ingredient, which is our feta cheese. And so if you'll notice that we didn't add any salt or other seasonings to this dish, which is really good that it gets a lot of flavor from the combination of the tomatoes, the basil, and the feta. So you really might find that when you make this at home, that you don't need to add any salt to it. You know, your family might like to add your favorite seasonings, maybe like red or black pepper or even some garlic. But I really encourage you to try it like it is before you add any salt, especially because it is really flavorful how it is. So we're going to go ahead and put our pasta, and then we will add our shrimp, tomato, basil, and feta mixture on top. And it is ready to go. I hope you'll give this a try. This is the basil, shrimp, and tomato pasta with feta. Get ready to enjoy.
For this recipe and more like it, scan this QR code.
There are a lot of great horticulture activities this time of year. Be sure and consider some of these events in the weeks ahead.
Next week on Oklahoma Gardening, we've got another new show as we look at what's new in horticulture.
We can tell Parker to go slower too if we need to.
Can we have him slow it down a little bit? Bailey, why don't we have one of those? One of what?
One of those automatic ones. That
We do. We do? We don't need it for this little tiny project.
To find out more information about show topics as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure to visit our website at oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. Join in on Facebook and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. Tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater gem. We would like to thank our generous underwriters, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, and Shape Your Future, a program of the Tobacco Settlement Endowment Trust. Additional support is also provided by Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, the Oklahoma Horticulture Society, the Tulsa Garden Club, and the Tulsa Garden Center.